In this session, I am going to discussing about bryophytes. Bryophytes are also called amphibians of plant kingdom. Bryophytes are also called amphibians of plant kingdom. Why it is called amphibians of plant kingdom? Why the bryophytes are amphibians of plant kingdom? Because of these plants can live in soil but depend on water for sexual reproduction, and these bryophytes occur in moist, humid and shaded localities, and they also play an important role in plant succession on bare rocks and soils. The plant body of bryophytes is more differentiated than that of algae. It is talus-like, prostrate and erect and attached to substratum, which means supporting object, attached to substratum by unicellular or multicellular rhizoids. Unicellular or multicellular rhizoids, and the lack of roots, leaves and stem. Lack, which means absence of roots, leaves and stem, and they may possess root-like, stem-like, leaf-like structures. Generally, the plant body of bryophytes is called gametophyte. Yes, the plant body of bryophytes is called gametophyte. Yes, what is gametophyte? Gametophyte, which means gamete producing body. Gametes producing body is called gametophyte. Here, the plant body of bryophytes is called gametophyte, which means it produces the gametes and it is haploid in nature. And the sex organs in bryophytes is multicellular. The sex organs in bryophytes is multicellular, and the male sex organ is called antheradium. The male sex organ is called antheradium. Yes, this antheradium produce biflagellated anthrozoids. Yes, this antheradium produce biflagellated anthrozoids. Okay, yes, and the female sex organ is archegonium. Yes, the female sex organ is archegonium. Yes, this archegonium, it is flask shaped structure. It is flask shaped structure and produce single egg. Okay, yes, the sex organs in bryophytes are multicellular. The male sex organ is antheradium. It produces biflagellated anthrozoids, and the female sex organ is archegonium. It is a flask shaped, produce single egg. Okay, yes, I already told about bryophytes or amphibians of plant kingdom. It needs both the soil and water. Okay, yes, when antheradium produce anthrozoids released into water, so these anthrozoids comes contact with egg and fuse to form zygote. Okay, yes, see, these anthrozoids released into water and comes contact with the egg, fuse to form zygote. Okay, this zygote do not undergo reductional division immediately, but later it will produce multicellular body that is called sporophyte. Yes, the zygote produce multicellular body that is called sporophyte. This sporophyte is not free living but attached to photosynthetic gametophyte because of it derives nourishment from it. That's why the sporophyte attached to photosynthetic gametophyte. Later, some cells of sporophyte undergoes reductional division, which means meiosis, undergoes reductional division to produce haploid spores. These haploid spores germinate and develop into new gametophyte. Bryophytes are also called amphibians of plant kingdom because they can live in soil, but it needs water for sexual reproduction, and they usually occurs in moist, damp and shaded localities, and they play a very important role in plant succession on bare rocks and soils. The plant body of bryophytes is more differentiated than that of algae. It is thallus-like, prostrate, erect and attached to substratum, which means supporting object, attached to substratum by unicellular or multicellular rhizoids. And the lack of roots, leaves and stems, which means absence of roots, stems and leaves, and they may possess root-like and leaves-like and stem-like structure. And the plant body of bryophytes is called gametophyte. What is gametophyte? Which means gametes producing body. So the bryophyte body is gametophyte. It will produce gametes. Okay. And the sex organs in bryophytes are multicellular. The male sex organ is called antheridium. It produces biflagellated anthrozoids, and the female sex organ is archegonium. It is flask shaped, produce single egg. When anthrozoids released into water, these anthrozoids comes contact with the egg, fuse it to form zygote. The zygote do not undergoes reductional division immediately, but later it's developed into multicellular body that is called sporophyte. This sporophyte is not free living. It's attached to photosynthetic gametophyte because of it derives nourishment from it. Okay. Some cells of sporophyte undergoes reductional division, which means meiosis, to produce haploid spores. These spores germinate to develop into new individuals or new gametophyte. Economic importance of bryophytes. Some mosses provide food for mammals, birds and other animals. Yes, some mosses provide food for mammals, birds and other animals. And some species of sphagnum. Sphagnum is also a moss. Provide peat, which means organic matter, that have long been used as fuel. Also used for packing materials. For transshipment of living material, living material, because they have water holding capacity. It's a transshipment of, which means shipping of goods. Okay. Yes. The third one important is some mosses along with the lichens are the first organism to colonize the rocks. Mosses along with lichens. We know about lichens. Lichens are the combination of both algae and fungi. So both mosses and lichens are the first organism to colonize the rocks. So hence they are the great ecological importance of bryophytes, and they decomposes the rocks to make suitable substrate for growth of higher plants. Some mosses forms mats on the soil that reduce the impact of rain falling and to prevent soil erosion. These are all economic importance of bryophytes. Okay, some mosses provides food for mammals and birds and other animals. Some mosses, which means some species of sphagnum, it is also a mosses, provide peat, which means organic material, that have long been used as fuel and also used for packing materials for transshipment of living material because they have water holding capacity. And some mosses along with lichens, which means combination of both algae and fungi, are the first organism to colonize the rocks. Hence, they are the great ecological importance. And they decompose the rocks to make a suitable substrate for growth of higher plants. And some mosses forms mats on the soil. They reduce the impact of falling rain and to prevent soil erosion. To divide the bryophytes are divided into liverworts, and mosses. Liverworts and mosses. The first one is liverworts. Example for liverworts, markensia. You can observe here, this is the markensia. The liverworts are small, flowerless, green plant, and they have leaf-like stem. And they usually grown in moist and shady habitats such as banks of streams, moist grounds, damp soils, and deep in the woods. And the plant body of liverworts is a thalide. Example, markensia. Yes, in the right side you can observe markensia. Both male sex organ and the female sex organ is there. The male sex organ is antheridiophore, the female sex organ is archegoniophore. The thallus is dorsoventrally flattened and closely oppressed, which means attached to substrate, which means substratum, by the help of rhizoids. And they have tiny leaf-like appendages in the two rows on the stem-like structure. And the reproduction, which means the asexual reproduction, takes place by fragmentation. Asexual reproduction takes place by fragmentation or formation of a specialized structure is called gemmi. Okay, so what is gemmi? Gemmi are green multicellular asexual buds. You can observe in markensia presence of a small asexual buds that is green and multicellular in nature, which is develops inside the receptacles. These receptacles is inside the receptacles located on thalli. And the gemma detached from the gametophyte and developed into new individuals, which means new gametophyte. Okay, the asexual reproduction takes place by fragmentation of thalli or formation of specialized structure is called gemmi. So what is gemmi? Gemmi are green multicellular asexual buds. Okay, so these gemmi which is developed inside the receptacles and located on thalli or thallus. Okay, and the gemma detached from the gametophyte and developed into new individuals or new gametophyte. So this is all about asexual reproduction. And during sexual reproduction, the sex organs. During sexual reproduction, the sex organs produced on either same or different thalli or different thallus. Then the male gamete is fused with female gamete to form zygote. After fertilization, zygote is developed into sporophyte. Yes, the sporophyte is differentiated into foot, seta, capsule. Inside the capsule, reductional division takes place, which means meiosis to produce haploid spores. To produce haploid spores. So these spores germinate into new gametophyte or new individual. Mosses or non-vascular plants, they produce spores. Non-vascular, which means absence of xylem and phloem, and they produce spores instead of seeds. Instead of seeds, they produce spores. Okay. Example for mosses: Fineria, Polytrichum, Sphagnum. In right side, you can observe Fineria and Sphagnum species. The predominant stage of the life cycle of a mosses is gametophyte. Gametophyte, which consists of two stages. One is, the first stage is protonema stage. The protonema stage, which is developed directly from spore, and it is creeping, green and branched and frequently filamentous stage. Okay. The predominant stage of life cycle of a mosses is gametophyte, which consists of two stages. One is protonema stage. The first one is protonema stage, which is directly developed from spore, and it is creeping and green, branched, frequently filamentous stage. And the second stage is leafy stage. Protonema is the first stage. The second one is leafy stage. Leafy stage is developed from secondary protonema as a lateral bud, and they consist upright, axis bearing spirally arranged leaves. Axis bearing spirally arranged leaves. Yes, in Fineria, in both Fineria and Sphagnum, you can observe the leaves are spirally arranged on the axis. They attach to soil by multicellular and branch rhizoids. They attach to soil by multicellular and branched rhizoids. In this stage, they bears the sex organs. In reproduction, in case of reproduction in mosses, the vegetative reproduction takes place by fragmentation. Vegetative reproduction takes place by fragmentation or budding in secondary protonema In case of sexual reproduction, the male sex organ Antheridia, the female sex organ Archegonia, both are produced at the apex of leafy shoots. And after fertilization, which means fusion of both male and female gametes to form zygote, after fertilization, the zygote developed into multicellular body that is called sporophyte, and then the sporophyte is differentiated into foot, seta, capsule. Then inside the capsule, reductional division, meiosis takes place and produce number of haploid spores. These spores germinate and develop into new gametophyte. Example for mosses: Fineria, Polytrichum and Sphagnum. So these are all example for mosses: Fineria, Polytrichum, Sphagnum. Dear students, in this session we have discussed about general characteristics of bryophytes and economic importance of bryophytes. Bryophytes are divided into liverworts and mosses. Example for liverworts: Markensia. Here the thallus is a dorsimoentral patterned and closely appressed or attached to substratum by the help of rhizoids. And here the asexual reproduction takes place by fragmentation of thalli or the formation of specialized structure that is called gemma. Gemma are green multicellular asexual buds which is developed inside the receptacles and located on thalli. And when the gemma detached from the gametophyte, it's developed into new individuals. And during sexual reproduction, the both sex organs, male and female sex organs, produced on either same or different thalli. After fertilization, the zygote developed into sporophyte. Then the sporophyte inside the capsule produce number of haploid spores. These haploid spores develop into new gametophyte. In case of mosses, mosses are non-vascular, which means absence of both xylem and phloem, and they produce spores instead of seeds. And example for mosses, Phaneria, Sphagnum, Polytrichum. And here the gametophyte shows two stages. One is protonema stage, another one is leafy stage. Protonema stage is directly developed from spore. It's a creeping, green and branched, frequently filamentous stage. The second one is leafy stage. The stage is developed from secondary protonema as a lateral bud, and here they consist upright, slender, axis-bearing, spirally arranged leaves, and they attach to soil by multicellular or branched rhizoids. And in this stage it bears the sex organs. Vegetative reproduction takes place by fragmentation or budding at the secondary protonema. And during sexual reproduction, the both Antheridia and Archegonia produce at the apex of leafy shoots, and after fertilization the zygote is developed into sporophyte. Again here also the sporophyte is differentiated into fourth seta capsule. Inside the capsule, meiosis, which means reductional division, takes place to produce haploid spores that are developed into new individuals. Thank you.